consortium. The bill you're considering would withdraw the state from that consortium, as other states have done. Other witnesses will address particular problems. I will touch briefly on just a few problems with Smarter Balanced. Smarter Balanced is one of the two consortia that the federal government is funding. The other one is called PARC. The funding is illegal. The federal government is illegally funding it, and it's perhaps illegally controlling Smarter Balanced. The U.S. Department of Education has given $175 million to the Smarter Balanced Consortium so that it can develop assessments and instructional modules. Through this funding, the federal department is violating not only a federal statute prohibiting its involvement with creating assessments, but also it's violating 3 separate statutes that prohibit supervising, directing, or controlling curriculum, because Smarter Balanced is developing curriculum. Even more troubling is the fact that the federal government is actively engaged in the item design of the Smarter Balanced test. This means that there is at least some federal oversight of the actual questions on the test. Iowans should be greatly concerned that their students might end up taking what is in essence a federal test. The second problem, Smarter Balanced embraces progressive testing fads that have failed in practice in other states. Smarter Balanced intends to replace the typical multiple choice tests, which are seen as outmoded in very 20th century, with cutting edge assessments that utilize open response type questions and performance items and projects and that sort of stuff. Having students do projects either themselves or in a group, and all of this would be on the test. This, in fact, like so much else in the Common Core and the assessment scheme, isn't a new idea, but rather it's a recycled failure. One of the best examples comes from Kentucky's experience in the 1990s. Kentucky implemented a test that embodied most of the progressive ideas of the Smarter Balanced test, especially with respect to the design of test items. For many reasons, including lack of efficiency and problems in scoring these subjective items, test responses, the Kentucky experiment was abandoned as a resounding failure. But now Smarter Balanced says we're going to try it all over again. I will not mention the difficulty and the cost of scoring all the open response and performance tasks, because other witnesses will do that. Suffice it to say, it's going to cost a lot of money to score these tests, because someone has to do it, and artificial intelligence cannot do it at this point where we are. Third, because Smarter Balanced requires sophisticated technology that many local school systems don't have, it is an online test, completely online. There will be a transition period, but after that it will be a completely online, computer-adaptive test. The testing will have to be spread out in many school districts because they don't have the technology to handle it. This will create problems both with test security and with fairness. Acknowledging the technology deficiencies, Smarter Balanced recommends that testing be completed over a 12-week window so that large groups of students can use smaller groups of computers. So think about what that means with a 12-week window. Students who take the test during the first week of the 12-week window will have almost 3 months less instructional time than the students who take it the last week. Now, if teacher evaluations are at some point tied to test results, might teachers object to that their students have a lot less instructional time than the teachers of the students who took it last? And would it be possible to keep students from discussing the test questions for 12 weeks? You can't keep students from discussing 12 test questions from first period to sixth period, so I'm not sure how we keep test security going through 12 weeks. So whoever came up with this idea did not think it through. Now, some school systems may consider avoiding this problem. We've talked about this in various places in the country by buying iPads or other devices like that for students and letting them take the test that way. Now, I am not an expert on the practicality of using devices for this. I would call your attention to an incident that occurred with the Los Angeles Unified School District last summer and last fall. The district launched the first phase of a $1 billion program to buy iPads for all of their K-12 students, and with the idea that they would take the Smarter Balanced test at some point on it. Within 2 weeks, they had to pull all of the iPads back. They had to recollect them because the tech-savvy students had figured out how to evade the security on the iPads and to access sites that they were not allowed to get onto. So this is not exactly what you want when you're testing, when students can get onto other sites. So this is something that you want to consider when you hear suggestions, oh, we'll just get students to use devices, that it may not be as easy as all that. Fourth, the actual piloting of the Smarter Balanced assessments has uncovered myriad problems that cast doubts on whether this particular system could work. Smarter Balanced piloting was done in California last year, and here are some of the problems that were revealed, and these have been widely reported in the media. Student confusion caused by inconsistent phrasing of instructions, interface glitches such as the disappearance of a student's responses if he gets up and leaves and goes to the restroom and then comes back, problems with being able to scroll up and down the page, things don't work, problems created by installing the secure browsers, slow internet connections, and incompatible hardware. And in New Hampshire recently, teachers in the Nashua School District themselves took the test. The Smarter Balance gave them the test and so that they could see exactly what it was, so they could evaluate it for themselves. And these were veteran teachers who took this test. And these were some of their comments. If you leave the screen for a short period of time, the information on the screen will be gone when you return. Another teacher said, I feel sad for the students who have to take this test. Not many will be successful. Another, I tried the 6th grade math. It was humbling and scary. I had technology problems. If kids have these problems, they'll just quit. One teacher said this was more of a test on computer skills than on the math concepts. If I were a student, I would just pick out an answer and move on. Another said kids won't even get past the computer directions. Another, I am concerned that the math test is not necessarily testing students' math abilities since there is so much reading. This test seems to assess how well the students read the math questions more than their math skills. And the last one said, frustration level builds as you take the test, creating mental despair. Students will shut down. The Nashua principal described these commenters as successful, dedicated veteran teachers. So if this is the experience of our best teachers with Smarter Balanced, what will happen to Iowa students when they have to take this test? Now, fifth, through the Smarter Balanced assessments, Iowa students' personal data will be shared with the federal government. The federal government suggests collecting over 400 data points on each child, including healthcare history and disciplinary history, religious affiliation, on and on and on. Some of that data, and we don't know yet how much of it because Smarter Balance hasn't told us what they're going to require to be sent to them, but it will go to the Smarter Balanced Consortium. Now, Smarter Balanced has a cooperative agreement with the federal government in which Smarter Balanced has agreed to give the federal government, the U.S. Department of Education, ongoing access to student-level data. That is in the agreement with Smarter Balanced and the federal government. So once the information goes from Iowa to Smarter Balanced, it will go to the federal government. That's part of the contract. This is disturbing on many levels, not least of which is that the Obama administration has gutted federal student privacy law. There is a law called FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, which was passed in 1974. 2 years ago, the Obama administration, by regulation, gutted that statute so that now student data that the federal government gets, or that even the Iowa State Department of Education gets, can be sent literally anywhere in the world as long as they use the right terminology to justify it. And the parents will not be able to object to it because they won't even know the disclosure is happening. And the last...
Excuse me,
yes.
We have the Department of Ed here. Would you like to respond to that in regard to the protection of student data?
Wait, no.
Would you like to respond to
No, I'm
that?
gonna let
in
you
regard to this?
There's going to be Q&A here. Let them respond. Let them respond when we're done, or let them respond after each of us.
I was not aware that this was going to be more than a half-hour subcommittee. It is 5 minutes to 8 o'clock. It started at 7:30. I didn't know that I knew that there were guests coming, but I think that it's only fair in the essence of time that when in fact there is an accusation of data being shared, that the department could respond to that.
Well, right now, she's gonna finish, and then he will have a chance to later.
Madam Chair, I'll sit down and I'll simply say, please share one example. We do have our person from Department of Ed who works directly with stuff. One example of student data being breached in this state, and I'd be happy to know about that. To the best of our knowledge, that has not occurred. If you can give some specific examples.
Okay, it hasn't happened
here in
yet.
Iowa.
It hasn't happened yet because the test is not in effect yet.
Any sort of student data breach in this state.
Well, I'm talking specifically about Smarter
Okay, thank
Balanced.
you.
when Smarter Balanced test goes into effect, whatever data goes to Smarter Balanced, and there will have to be some, I don't know how much it will be, but it will be shown to the federal government because the cooperative agreement requires it, and you will have no control over that. So the last thing that I would say is the identities of the Smarter Balanced leadership should suggest some second thoughts about investing in these assessments. One of the key figures in the Smarter Balanced Consortium is a woman named Linda Darling Hammond, who is a Stanford University education professor who is well known for her progressive education philosophies. In fact, she was the recommendation of Bill Ayers to be President Obama's Secretary of Education. She didn't get that job, but she got another influential position at the Smarter Balanced as Director of Content Specifications. Darling Hammond's track record in actually educating as opposed to writing about education is not particularly good. She started a school in California at which she was able to try out her progressive theories, primarily on low-income Black and Hispanic students. And her school made the list of California's lowest achieving 5% of schools and is no longer in operation. So this may not be the woman you want in charge of testing Iowa students. So there are many troubling features of the Common Core scheme, and one of the worst is its connection to the national testing, including Smarter Balanced. So Iowa, in my view, would be wise to step back from Smarter Balanced and step back from this whole nationalized, centralized contraption and reassert control over Iowa education.